Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Now, in our previous deep dives, we hit on this absolutely fascinating idea. Farms are so much more than just dirt and tractors. They're actually living, breathing memory systems. They're holding on to this vital, multi-generational operating intelligence that, honestly, no satellite or fancy dashboard could ever reconstruct if we were to lose it. Today, we're unpacking a massive paradigm shift in how we think about food security and exactly why we have to start viewing our food systems as critical infrastructure. Okay, let's dive into this. If we accept that farms are preserving all this vital institutional memory, and they are, we kind of have to ask a Socratic question here. Who actually protects the farms themselves? I mean, we love throwing AI at every single problem right now, thinking tech is just going to swoop in and save us. But the answer to this structural riddle doesn't lie in AI alone. We need something way more foundational to protect our agricultural operating intelligence.
And that foundation is what the research calls the control layer. Think of it as the ultimate governance architecture for the whole system. It's the framework that decides exactly which capabilities we keep, which risks we can actually absorb, and ultimately which forms of agricultural memory survive long enough for our shiny new tech to amplify them later. Literally, it's the invisible scaffolding keeping the whole house from collapsing when the weather gets rough.
All right, Section 1. Two nations, different risks. Let's look at how this plays out in the real world.
So starting with England's farming roadmap. Structurally, the UK is super import exposed. Get this. Domestic farmers over there produce about 65% of the nation's food, and they manage roughly 70% of the land. That means a whole 35% of their food has to be brought in from the outside. So for the UK, their control layer is entirely built around supply assurance. They absolutely have to maintain reliable global access while fiercely defending what they can produce at home.
And this brilliantly illustrates the stark geographic contrast we're dealing with. You've got the UK over here asking, how do we secure enough food when the world is going crazy, right? Because they're import exposed. But the United States, totally different ballgame. The US produces way more of certain commodities than it could ever eat domestically. It's totally export dependent. So the US control layer is asking, how do we keep enough global market access to absorb all this crazy productive capacity? Two totally different problems, demanding two completely different control layers.
Moving on to Section 2, the Farm Bill, redefining food policy. Let's zoom in on the US.
For ages, there's been this prevailing myth that the Farm Bill is just, subsidy legislation, a giant bucket of financial handouts. Now, look, risk management is for sure essential. Agriculture is literally exposed to Mother Nature, climate swings, and crazy global markets. But viewing this legislation as just a payout to farmers, that completely misses the actual big picture.
When you actually look at the architecture of the House-passed Farm Bill 2.0, you realize we've shifted from just helping out individual farmers to preserving holistic national capabilities. This bill is designed to keep us producing food under massive uncertainty. It preserves our ability to process goods, distribute them across complex supply chains, govern our strategic data, and, there it is again, protect agricultural memory. So we're not just looking at standard ag policy here. We are looking at some deep strategic control layer thinking.
Which brings us to Section 3, food infrastructure, a national definition.
This shift means we have to completely redefine what food infrastructure even is in the modern world. We're way beyond just tractors and grain silos. First off, science is infrastructure. It's not some optional budget line item. The research funded by these policies is literally renewing the entire food system. We're talking new crop genetics, new processing tech, cutting-edge food safety methods. Scientific capability is the absolute bedrock of a nation's operating capacity. Next, processing is infrastructure. You might remember the recent temporary closures at big facilities like JBS, Tyson, or Riceland. Listen, those aren't just private factories. They are highly strategic, critical national assets. If processing bottlenecks, the whole system chokes, even if the farms are having a record year. Turning raw biological stuff into actual food, that is critical infrastructure, hands down. And check out this mind-bending conceptual shift. Family farms are national infrastructure. Farm Bill 2.0 actually tackles farm succession through a new commission on farm transitions. Think about that for a second. Passing down the family farm isn't just a private inheritance issue anymore, it's a matter of national capability. Because if we don't handle that demographic transition, all that institutional memory simply vanishes.
Even the regulatory stuff gets a reframe here. You know food safety plans like HACCP for smaller processors? It's not just bureaucratic red tape or box-checking compliance.
It's actually about building redundancy into the system. If a nation needs a more decentralized, spread-out processing network to handle a crisis, those small guys have to be able to execute safety standards flawlessly. So in that light, HACCP literally becomes a strategic capability. Now you might be thinking, whoa, treating agriculture as national infrastructure? Are we abandoning private enterprise? No way. The source text makes it super clear. Competitive markets are absolutely crucial for allocating resources efficiently. The governance control layer doesn't replace the market, it just preserves the baseline capability so those markets can actually function. It's basically reinforcing the sandbox where private enterprise can go out and build public resilience.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 4, the limits of AI, and why governance trumps technology.
Obviously, AI is this incredible multiplier, right? It's amazing for efficiency. It can forecast crop yields, spot a biological disease a mile away, untangle supply chains, speed up traceability, all the cool stuff. But look at what it absolutely cannot do. AI cannot magic an export market into existence. It can't physically keep a processing plant from rusting. It cannot sit down and transfer generational wisdom from a grandfather to a granddaughter. And it sure can't govern competing national priorities. It just can't replace the physical, structural dependencies governed by the control layer. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this fantastic metaphor from the text. Warnings about AI speed are like a snail criticizing a Ferrari for breaking a speed limit. I love that. A Ferrari is literally built to go fast, but you still don't let it drive through a shopping mall, right? It needs the governance of paved roads and traffic lights to avoid total disaster. AI is the Ferrari, our control layer is the road system. Speed without control is just chaos, and speed is only useful if the system around it can actually handle the risk. So I want to turn this directly over to you, the strategists, the business leaders, the policymakers watching this explainer. The text gives us this executive diagnostic to gut-check your own organizational resilience. Ask yourself, which capabilities in your system are strategically vital but totally unmanaged? Are you actually preserving long-term capacity, or are you just squeezing out a little more performance for this quarter? What parts of your operation are completely invisible until everything hits the fan? And really think about this. Are your AI investments genuinely building resilience, or are they just making things slightly more efficient? So, the crucial point is this final provocative thought. If you're struggling to answer those diagnostic questions, is it possible you're boosting your short-term outputs while quietly destroying your long-term capacity? Remember, food systems don't become resilient just because a farm had a good year or because your AI model is super smart. They become resilient because a rock-solid control layer is preserving those critical relationships between the land, the processors, the markets, and the people over generations. Definitely something to chew on as you evaluate your own infrastructure. Thanks for tuning into The Explainer, and we will catch you next time.